For as long as humans have walked the earth, we've looked into the darkness and wondered what lies beyond. The stars above, the shadows in the woods, the silence after death, these things have always fascinated and frightened us. Long before we had science, before we had explanations, people believed the world was full of invisible forces. Spirits, gods, demons, and ghosts. The unseen was just as real as the physical. And as the centuries passed, these beliefs evolved, blending faith, fear, and folklore into what we now call the paranormal. Tonight, we're going on a journey through time to trace how humanity's relationship with the supernatural has changed. From the first ancient ghost stories to seances and spirit photography, to the ghost hunters and paranormal investigators of today. This is the story of how the unseen world has followed us for thousands of years, and why, even in a modern age, we still can't stop believing. The idea of ghosts didn't start with movies or novels. It began thousands of years ago, in the earliest civilizations. In ancient Mesopotamia, people believed that death wasn't the end. It was simply another form of existence. But if a body wasn't buried properly, or if a person died violently, their spirit could become trapped, wandering among the living. Clay tablets dating back over 4,000 years describe exorcisms to drive away the angry dead. These early writings are among the first records of ghostly encounters in human history. In ancient Egypt, the concept of the afterlife was even more elaborate. Egyptians believed every person had a spiritual double, the Ka, which left the body after death but needed offerings, food, and ritual care to survive in the next world. If neglected, it might return as a ghost, restless and hungry. The pyramids, with their carefully sealed tombs and sacred inscriptions, were as much about protecting the living from the dead as honoring the dead themselves. Even in ancient Greece and Rome, ghosts were common parts of daily life. The philosopher Pliny the Younger wrote one of the earliest surviving ghost stories, about a haunted house in Athens where an old man in chains appeared each night until his buried body was discovered and laid to rest. To the Greeks, this was more than a story. It was proof that the dead could linger until justice or peace was found. The Romans even had a festival called Lemuria, where families would leave offerings and chant prayers to keep the spirits of the restless dead from haunting their homes. In these early civilizations, ghosts were not just tales for children. They were part of life, woven into religion, daily routine, and the fear of the unknown. During the Middle Ages, the world became a place of faith and fear. Christianity spread across Europe, shaping how people saw life and death. The church taught that the soul went to heaven, hell, or purgatory, but ordinary people still believed that the dead could walk among them. Ghosts were often seen as souls trapped in purgatory, seeking prayers to help them move on. Stories of haunted monasteries, cursed castles, and vengeful spirits spread through villages and towns. Superstitions ruled daily life. Candles were lit for protection. Iron charms were carried to ward off evil, and holy water was sprinkled to keep away unseen forces. But belief in the paranormal wasn't limited to spirits. The medieval imagination was full of creatures that blurred the line between myth and terror: vampires, werewolves, demons, and fairies that could steal people away into their hidden realms. Each story reflected the fears of its time: disease, famine, sin, and punishment. In this era, the paranormal was a hobby or entertainment. It was a constant reminder that unseen powers surrounded humanity. For many, it was a comfort proof that there was more beyond death. For others, it was a source of deep, paralyzing fear. Between the 15th and 17th centuries, belief in the supernatural reached a deadly peak. Across Europe, and later, in the American colonies, thousands were accused of witchcraft. People believed witches had made pacts with the devil, using dark powers to cause sickness, storms, and misfortune. Books like the Malleus Maleficarum or the Hammer of Witches taught how to identify and punish them. Anyone who seemed different, an old woman living alone, a midwife, or even a sick child, could become the target of fear. The Salem witch trials of 1692 became the most infamous example of this hysteria. Strange fits, unexplained illnesses, and mass panic led to over 200 accusations and 20 executions. Neighbors turned on neighbors, convinced that dark magic was spreading. What's haunting about this chapter in history is how it shows the double edge of belief. The same curiosity that led people to explore the supernatural could also drive them to fear and destroy one another. The paranormal wasn't just a story anymore. It was something people died for. By the 18th and 19th centuries, science began to challenge superstition. The Enlightenment taught that reason and evidence could explain the world. Yet even as people embraced logic, they couldn't let go of their fascination with the unseen. In the mid-19th century, the spiritualist movement began to sweep across Europe and America. It started with the Fox sisters in upstate New York, who claimed to communicate with spirits through mysterious knocks and raps on the walls. Their seances became famous, and soon, thousands of people were holding their own gatherings, hoping to speak with lost loved ones. For many, this new movement was comforting, especially during times of war and loss, when families longed to believe that death wasn't the end. Mediums performed in parlors, moving tables, dimming lights, and speaking in trance-like voices as spirits answered questions from beyond. Even royalty got involved. Queen Victoria, grieving after the death of her husband, attended seances in the hopes of hearing from him again. The line between science and the supernatural began to blur. Some saw spiritualism as proof of life after death. Others saw it as clever deception. But either way, the paranormal had entered the modern world. As spiritualism spread, skepticism grew. Magicians, scientists, and researchers began testing mediums, uncovering many as frauds using wires, hidden assistants, or sleight of hand. Yet amid the trickery, some investigators still believed something genuine might exist. In 1882, scholars in London founded the Society for Psychical Research, the first scientific organization devoted to studying the paranormal. They investigated hauntings, psychic phenomena, and telepathy, treating the supernatural like any other field of research. Even famous figures got involved. The magician Harry Houdini, while exposing fake mediums, spent years searching for real evidence of communication with the dead after losing his mother. His rivalry with spiritualist Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of Sherlock Holmes, symbolized the growing divide: belief versus skepticism, faith versus reason. This era marked the birth of modern paranormal investigation, a mix of science, storytelling, and hope. People no longer feared the unseen, they wanted to understand it. The 20th century brought technology, and with it, new ways to explore the unexplained. Cameras captured supposed spirits in photographs. Audio recorders picked up mysterious whispers and knocks. Scientists and hobbyists alike began using electricity, magnets, and sound to search for proof of life after death. After World War II, interest in the paranormal surged. Grieving families searched for comfort, and stories of hauntings, mediums, and UFOs filled newspapers. The idea that our world might be full of unseen dimensions and visitors, both spiritual and extraterrestrial, became part of popular culture. By the 1970s and 80s, the paranormal had become a global phenomenon. Stories like the Amityville Horror and the Enfield Poltergeist blurred the line between reality and myth. Movies like The Exorcist terrified audiences and made the supernatural mainstream again. Paranormal researchers like Ede and Lorraine Warren became household names, investigating haunted houses and possessions that inspired decades of horror films. What was once an ancient superstition had evolved into entertainment. But underneath the thrill, the same ancient curiosity still lingered. Today, the paranormal is more popular than ever. With social media and streaming platforms, anyone can share their own ghost story or evidence of a haunting. Infrared cameras, Spirit boxes and digital recorders have replaced candles and crystals, but the goal is the same: to make contact with the unknown. Shows like Ghost Adventures, Paranormal Lockdown, and The Dead Files have turned ghost hunting into a form of storytelling, a mix of science, drama, and folklore. Meanwhile, online communities analyze every flicker of light, every shadow caught on camera, searching for meaning. Skeptics point to psychological explanations, pareidolia, suggestion, and the human brain's need to find patterns. But believers argue that science still can't explain everything. Maybe ghosts aren't physical beings at all. Maybe they're energy, memory, or echoes of consciousness we don't yet understand. What's certain is that the fascination hasn't faded. After thousands of years, we're still asking the same question: are we truly alone? Looking back across history, one thing becomes clear: the paranormal has never just been about ghosts. It's about us. It's about our need to understand death, to find hope in loss, and to believe that life continues in some way. Every story, from the haunted tombs of Egypt to modern ghost hunting shows, reflects the same longing: the desire to know that those we love aren't truly gone, the belief that somewhere, somehow, the line between life and death isn't as sharp as it seems. Maybe that's why the paranormal endures, because no matter how much technology advances or how rational we become, we still crave mystery. We still feel that chill when the lights flicker or the house creaks when we're alone. And maybe, just maybe, that feeling means something. The history of the paranormal is the history of belief itself. It's the story of how humans have tried to make sense of the unseen through religion, science, fear, and hope. It's proof that even in a world of logic and reason, there's still room for wonder. Because whether ghosts are real or just reflections of our imagination, they remind us of something universal: that we all wonder what happens when the lights go out. And maybe, after all this time, that question is the most human thing of all. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the history of the paranormal, make sure to like this video, subscribe for more mysteries, and tell me in the comments: do you believe in ghosts, or do you think it's all in our heads? Because whether you're a skeptic or a believer, the story of the paranormal never truly ends.